Greetings. I am State Representative Donna Bullock and Chair of the Pennsylvania Legislative Black Caucus. I am honored to provide brief remarks for today's symposium, Environmental Justice in Pennsylvania. We don't need to look to the national stories of lead in Flint, Michigan's water, or the impact of Hurricanes Katrina and Maria on communities of color to understand environmental justice and racism. Environmental violence happens right here in Pennsylvania. Lead and asbestos in Philadelphia schools, air quality issues in Pittsburgh, and so much more. But these stories, these headlines, are just a glimpse of what has been occurring in low-income and communities of color for decades. Our families have been exposed to air and water pollution from power plants, factories, and incinerators. Our water sources have been contaminated with chemical waste. Our communities have been dumped on by contractors and developers. Our children have missed way too many days of school due to asthma, and they continue to be exposed to lead and asbestos from pipes and paint in their homes and schools. Our communities are also less likely to recover from climate-caused disasters. In the aftermath, we pay more for basic necessities such as food, water, and electricity, the prices of which will increase not only during these natural disasters, but over time as these resources become more limited by the effects of climate change. For these reasons, Black and Brown communities are overwhelmingly supportive of measures to protect the environment. Yes, we care. We care about clean air, clean water, energy, efficiency, and renewable energy options. Yes, we care, and we see global warming as a serious problem. We support limits on carbon production from coal and gas-fired power plants. And yes, we also want to benefit from positive environmental policies and from efforts to create more and healthier jobs in renewable wind and solar energy. We've been talking about systemic racism and racial inequities all year long. And tackling systemic racism is as fundamental to achieving environmental and climate justice as it is to criminal justice reform and voting rights. In fact, in Pennsylvania, it's not just fundamental, it is constitutional. It is a constitutional right. But we cannot ignore that the disparities we've seen in the COVID-19 infection, hospitalization, and death rates are directly linked to long-standing health, social, economic, and environmental inequities. Our communities have faced these inequities for years, and these conditions are deeply rooted in structural and systemic racism. The members of the Pennsylvania Legislative Black Caucus, we get it. We understand this intersection of racial justice, environmental justice, and climate justice. That is why several of our members have championed legislation to address these disparities. Senator Hughes has introduced legislation to codify and expand the Office of Environmental Justice. Representative Cruz, he's introduced legislation to increase fines for illegal dumping of tires, while Representative Rabb has championed several bills to ban the use of non-recycled and non-combustible food and beverage containers in state-owned buildings, to create a plastic pollution task force, and to increase transparency in the oil and gas industry. Representative Summer Lee has been a tireless advocate for environmental justice communities from the neighborhoods of Braddock and Pittsburgh all the way to Chester and Philadelphia. Freshman legislator Rick Kudrowski has taken on a leadership role in our climate caucus, and I have introduced legislation to support community solar programs, to increase fines for illegal dumping, and to study food waste here in the Commonwealth. These are just examples of the work that we are doing as members of the Black Caucus. We have and will continue to advocate for renewable energy, diversity and clean jobs and entrepreneurship, and for the equitable distribution of RGGI funds to communities of color and other environmental justice communities. As we dig into our budget negotiations over the next few weeks, we will continue to advocate for budget equity as well. equity in every state grant process, every department, and in every level of government. As this influx of relief dollars comes to our states, we must ensure equitable distribution of resources and services. To address the inequities we have been talking about all year long, inequities that many of our communities known existed long before COVID-19, these inequities were built by transportation and infrastructure policies that separated our communities from good jobs, good schools, medical care. These are policies, environmental policies, that made our communities fence-line communities with hazardous facilities in our backyards, and policies that created this built environment, a built environment that has shown itself to be unjust and unhealthy. We know that with all of those things in the background, we must strategically invest in public health and safety for our communities. We must strategically invest in environmental injustice initiatives vetted and endorsed by you, by our communities, by our neighbors, by those who are on the front lines of environmental justice and racism. I thank you again for this opportunity to address the symposium, and I welcome you to connect with the Pennsylvania Legislative Black Caucus. We are here. We want to be allies. We want to be partners in this fight for environmental justice and racial justice. Thank you again for this invitation, and I look forward to hearing more about the work that comes out of this symposium and how we can move our communities forward together.